6:32, and we are opening up a special session, closed session meeting, public comment session. I'm going to take roll call. Vice President Tasai. Here. Director Sheriff Watt.
Here.
Director Duffy.
Here.
Director Madabi. Here. Okay, and I'm Eileen Natoli. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, we will close and reconvene for an open session at 7:30. Thank you. But I'm going to start the meeting. Good evening. It's 7:37 on Thursday, June 13th, and we are here for our regular meeting. I'm going to take roll call. Director Sheriff Watt.
Here.
Director Madabi. Here. Director Deppie. Here. Vice President Tasai. Here. Okay. All the directors are here. And we will begin. With respect to the closed session, I can report that we gave direction to our labor negotiator, and John Holtzman will report out on the other matter.
Thank you. The board authorized a settlement in favor of the district in the amount of $75,200 to be paid to the district by Allied World Insurance Company, which is the surety for Eagle Solutions Incorporated, which was the number one bidder, lowest bid on the community center, but subsequently defaulted on the bid.
All right. Thank you. Now we'll take public comments for items not on the agenda. Andrew?
Hello. My name is Andrew Gutierrez. The last meeting, a woman came up front and expressed dismay at the smear flyer that had been circulated in Kensington. The anonymous smear mugshot mailer targeting Interim Chief Police Ricky Hall and the 4 progressive members of the board was sent to all Kensington residents in early May. His content was beyond the pale. It was horrible. It made me think about how I could understand and find out who would be responsible for sending out such an ugly piece of information. The United States Post Office number, mailing permit, number 2196, was from San Jose, California, and it was not traceable. However, when you examine the contents of the mailer, most of it was redacted. But there was an important bit of information that was not. The mugshot itself had a release stamp date of February 28, 2019. And it was from the Solano County Sheriff's Office, Records Division. I phoned them up and I wanted to find out who had asked for this information. They said I couldn't get the mailer because that would require a special records request. But they immediately gave me the name of who requested and received the mailer, the mugshot. I had the name, but I wanted it a hard copy. So I submitted a PRA, the first one in my 80 years of life, and I got it, and I was just absolutely surprised. The requester's name was Justin E. Buffington of the law firm Rains, Lucia, Stearns, St. Paul, and Silvers, PC, the law firm that represents numerous police associations across the state. They represent Berkeley, El Cerrito, Kensington, Richmond. But let's be clear, well, that's one of the dots of getting that mailer, which I asked specifically for who received the mugshot from February 28th, 2019. That's a dot. It doesn't say who sent out the material, who funded it, or why. So I don't know who actually mailed all that material. However, the East Bay Express of June 27, 2018 reported that the Richmond Police Officers Association had paid for hit flyers targeting local progressive government officials. The article was titled "The Firing of Captain Mark Gagan," and it stated that in every Richmond election as far back as 2008, the Richmond Police Officers Association had paid for hit pieces to be distributed through the mail against progressive council members. Among them were Governor Gail McLaughlin, Joanka Beckles, former council member Jeff Ritterman, and council member Martinez. Before the 2018 election in Kensington, 3 flyers were distributed. They were also anonymous, and they were not traceable. And there were only 2 bits of information that were on those flyers. One was the telephone number, 510-295-8168. Now, I found out whose number that is. And possibly we might ask that person who sent out those mailers. And the second bit of information was that the photos that were in those mailers were from telescopic lenses that were so close and so detailed that you could have done a dermatological analysis based on the photos. Now, these 3 poorly written alarmist flyers were full of misinformation. And so I keep wondering, has smearing and misinformation, which I consider to be the bottom of the ethical barrel, is it now acceptable modus operandi in Kensington? I think not. And so we need to know who actually put out all of those mailers.
Thank you very much.
I estimate that the cost of those mailers was about $20,000 minimum, likely much more. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments before we begin the meeting?
I just have an announcement to make. Those of you who are used to having Wi-Fi here, it's not working tonight, even though it may show up on your device. And secondly, the clock back there is not correct, so use your own devices for timekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will begin then.
Hi, I'm Katie Gluck and Peter Heidel. I want to announce that on June 29th, the KPSC will be having a public safety meeting in this hall at 10 a.m. from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And the concern of the meeting is the things that you can and cannot expect to happen during a disaster. We'll be having Chief Hall here, Fire Marshal Dave Gibson. We'll be having a representative from East Bay Mud, from PG&E, and Speech Sanitary District. This is extremely important considering that PG&E has now made the announcement that we're going to be having many power outages of Roman drawings. So please come and find out what you need to do. We'll also have the CERT people here, and they're going to have on display 55-gallon barrels of water and they to go bags, so you can even order them here that day, and then you'll be all set. Okay. Then the other thing, there's one other thing too. This is concerning the finance meeting on May the 21st. That was not in compliance with federal law. Section 202 of the American with Disability Acts of 1990. It was out of compliance with that, so therefore was also out of compliance with the Brown Act, because in the Brown Act it says that they must also follow all federal regulations. Just wanted to point that out. And people should know that they're out of compliance, and certain people should definitely know better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments before we begin?
Hello, I'm Mark Altenberg. I'm here representing the Kensington Path Keepers. This is a new group that's just formed in the last year or so about preserving and acquiring the paths in their public ownership. I just want to make a few quick comments about what we're up to. First of all, I wanted to thank the KPPCSD for planting trees and trimming the grass on what's known as the Gore Lot. That's really nice work in the community. And we recognized it, and we noticed that by the bus stop. That's known as the Gore Lot, or also known as Arlington Path. There's a little set of railroad ties.
Actually, it's not known as the Gore lot. That somehow got named, but Gore had nothing to do with that lot. It was from Kathy Kosel and Jan Kosel's grandmother who donated the property to the district.
Right.
And Gore has nothing to do with that.
So a Gore Lot is a technical term, I think, just for an abandoned triangle
Well,
of property.
it's incorrect, so
Okay.
yeah, we can move on, but yeah.
Anyway, so we're working on connecting the community and raising awareness about the paths. And a couple of things that we've done is we've created a brochure that has a map in it. And you can get this, I have a bunch of copies here. You can get this at Roxical, the country cheese market. You can get it at the farmer's market. We have these, and we're going to have some at Zip Code East Bay. So you can get your own copy of the map for free. And you'll see this, I left my notes there. You'll see this poster around town. It's the same map that we have in the brochure, and that'll signify places that you can pick up the brochure. So I have my notes here. We have a website and a mailing list. The website is kensingtonpathkeepers.org, and we keep updating that with information as we get it. We created the maps that I've shown you, and we're connecting with various people in the community, such as the KPPCSD and the FPD and the KCC and the KIC and other community groups to sort of gather forces and raise awareness in the community. We've been talking with the Berkeley Path Wanderers and the El Cerrito Trail Trekkers, and they serve as models with volunteers maintaining their paths. And they have community volunteers, and they apply for grants and work with their local agency to make improvements in the paths, and we want to follow that model. It's a successful model, especially in Berkeley, where they have 136 paths compared to our 11 paths in Kensington. We've met with Contra Costa County staff and STEGE to better understand the requirements and concerns, and we've been gathering and reviewing documents about the Kensington Path, including the huge comprehensive report that was done by the KPPCSD in 2011 and 2012, done in conjunction with the KPPCSD and community members. So we've been reviewing that, and the key questions that we want to answer as we review these things and talk to the community is, what is the acquisition process and what will be the cost of acquisition? What agency should acquire the paths? What is the cost of acquisition? I just mentioned that. What is going to be the cost ongoing of liability insurance and maintenance, and what will it cost to make improvements over time? I think those are of interest to everybody in this room, if not the whole community. So what we're going to do is meet with path neighbors and community groups and individuals, hear their ideas, wants, and needs, work on answering these key questions, and publish updates and information about the paths on our website and in our newsletter and in the Outlook. So keep an eye out, and maybe later this year we'll even hold a town hall meeting focused totally on the paths for everybody in the community to attend. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
There have been some comments on Nextdoor about Bayview mixing recyclable materials in with garbage. My neighbor noticed this months ago, but was told that it gets separated later, which does not seem right. During April and May, I watched and I saw the crew routinely dump recyclables from 4 customers' curbside containers into a large transfer cart along with garbage from backyard cans and put all of it into the garbage side of the truck. I finally spoke to Nestor, the foreman, who said it was because people are recycling wrong. But I pointed out that he had just dumped 3 small containers of clean and dry mixed cans, bottles, and paper, plus a stack of newsprint and flattened cardboard, all in with garbage. He then said it was by accident. A month ago, I sent emails to Greg Christie and to you, Tony, but I have received no reply to my request for the official explanation of why this is happening. The franchise agreement allows Bayview to refuse to collect recyclables under certain market conditions, but it does not permit disposal in landfill, a violation of the 1989 State Waste Management Act and the related county ordinance. Bayview is supposed to take all curbside recycling materials to the recovery facility in Richmond. The question is, has the county granted the district an exemption to allow Bayview to send recyclables to landfill? Nobody knows.
Okay, we now will go to the next, the next agenda item, which is honoring Kensington Eagle Scouts from Troop 100 and 104. These are Kensington troops, and we have 3 Eagle Scouts. And could you please come up? All right. We have certificates for Andrew Conrad. Andrew? Or Alex, sorry. Alex worked in Alvarado Park, Wildcat Canyon, building fencing along the trail and removing invasive plants. Thank you very much. And Matt Harrison built an arbor at the school garden in El Cerrito High School. Thank you very much. And Daniel Huber built wheelchair accessible path in the school garden at Vista High School in Richmond. Thank you very much. I'm going to take forward the staff comments now.
I have comment.
We're going to take staff comments.
Okay, so first is the housekeeping comment. You may have noticed I put some papers at the back. we'll come up and talk about it once we get to the budget stage. There is some supplemental number crunching I've been doing. Second, but more importantly, I wish to inform the public that the district, for whatever reason, has been actively hampering my ability to undertake my fiduciary duty. For example, the district has, over 35 days, prevented me from seeing consultant bills, the bill details, which are not confidential and which even the public is entitled to. They have refused and have dragged out the process of providing those bills to me. Further, the budget detail worksheet, which details how the actual budget line items were built, I had to literally fight for and press for multiple times in order to get my hands on, and I got it at 9:22 p.m. last night. And this is a public document. It has always been. It's been in all our finance committee dropouts, or like our posts. And really, I've had cases where the general manager and the district have wholesale stalled on providing me public records. And I find that completely outrageous given the Public Record Act, how it operates. And I'm like, how am I supposed to underdo my duties when I don't even know what's going on half the time? Or I cannot even get access to information to figure out what is going on. Lastly, this goes to the board, and it's actually quite important. I'm obliged to inform you that during the week I discovered the LAFCO liaison acted without express permission or knowledge of the board or the staff working on the MSR, this is the Municipality Service Review, and he had been submitted to LAFCO a request for substantial edits to be made in his capacity as a KPPCSD official. This was never authorized in Brown Act by the board for the liaison to undertake these activities. I also discovered the president had attempted to make submission changes to a table in the Kensington MSR, again without staff's knowledge. Is there any comment to this?
Was this the document that board members took over when there was a long staff leave of absence, unfortunately, and we had to step in at that time? And I believe that we filled in some gaps, for example, including other special districts that operated within Kensington. Is that the document that I'm thinking of?
That might have been true last year, but not this year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Any other board or staff comments?
Hello, I have one comment. At the last meeting, I was calling in, but I believe it was Gail Feldman asked where the ad hoc committee document was on the website. And I also believe that I told her to just do a search in ad hoc in the search bar, and she'd find it. I'm assuming that worked out. Now, there was a problem with our searching on the website. It would find documents, but if you've ever used it and it's led you to a page of, say, 20 documents, you weren't sure which one was actually the hit. So, like, on our meeting archives, the press releases, so it was very confusing. I talked to Streamline, our provider, pretty much since the website was up, and I had conversations with them. I sent actually a feature request, and they were a bit sympathetic, but nothing really much got done. And last year at the CSDA conference, I had a chance to sit down with the whole team for actually about half an hour, and I went through our whole website, showed them all our limitations with their system, and I made a big point of the search problem. This was actually one advantage of being there because they had their whole team there, so I could sit with the general manager, well, I guess the general manager, the support staff, the technical staff, and I really had a one-on-one with the whole company for about half an hour. So it was very useful. And then when I explained and showed them our website, she actually got it. And recently they changed it. So if you do a search for a document and the hit is on a page with, say, 20 or so, it will highlight the document that you were searching for. So you no longer have to guess which document was found. Our meetings sometimes have a lot of different documents. So it's really useful. I'm happy they did it, and it really did make a difference being able to talk to them in person and show them our website on my laptop and say, this is the challenges we're facing. There's some other things I'd like them to fix, and I have good communication with them, so I'm hoping that also happens. But the search feature, I think, is a really big one. I'm really happy that they did it for us.
I have a question for General Manager. Who's supposed to be handling the website? Is that a board or district function?
Well, currently, it's, because of the lack of staff, it's, the board has stepped in to assist.
Who did it before?
I think there is a
police officer.
police officer.
Actually, with the district administrator.
I don't know, this is preceding my time. I don't know who did it. Was it, I think there was a police officer. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and the case was that we have a rebuilt website and with new requirements. It, of course, is the will of this board member that all those tasks be taken up by staff. So, but at this time, it is balanced.
Is it the board's website or the district's website?
It's the district's website.
So should the board of directors be in any way
Is
involved?
this an agenda item to be discussed?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, any other board comments? If not, we'll move to staff comments.
Testing. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the last 45 days as far as what the police department has been involved in. They made an ID theft arrest assisting Oakland Police Department. They also made a warrant arrest on Arlington Avenue. There was a residential fire that we had Kensington, El Cerrito, Richmond, Albany, and Berkeley fire departments responded to. Also last night, there was a domestic violence arrest that was made here in town. So I just wanted to give everyone a kind of a brief update as far as the arrests and some of the responses that your police department has been handling. Thank you.
May I suggest that we send out occasional Nixle community messages with that? I know Berkeley Police does, and the reason I'm making that suggestion in part is I think that's going to be, in the future, a more important vehicle to alert people on news.
Sure. Just so that everyone knows, everything that I've just discussed, it's either currently posted on the website under press releases or will be relatively shortly.
And can I congratulate you on the sign posting on Purdue, the speed sign? That's lovely to see. So if you go down Purdue now, you'll see the new speed sign.
I wanted to interject something on behalf of staff. Answer the question about who was handling the website prior to the conversion to the new website. It was I, and I handled all of the postings on the website up until the conversion, and I still handle many of the postings, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Could you please speak right into the mic, Eileen? Yeah, really close.
Okay. We're going to move to...
Madam Chair, I have just a couple of items. I did not have a written report this month because these are, I was just updated yesterday and this morning on a couple of these items. The first item is the Klutz investigation. I understand that the inquiry has been completed and a report will be issued next week. The General Counsel will review the report and discuss its disposition after reviewing it and how much can be made public and whether we want additional items also looked into related to Klutz. So we've come to the conclusion pretty much of that investigation. We also want to update our process for police chief. We had 5 candidates that we were considering, and through the process there were a number of interviews. At the current time, 4 of them have withdrawn from the process, and leaving 1 candidate. And we have asked for some additional candidates. And so I've received 1 additional name, and so the process is behind schedule because of that. So just to let everybody, just to update you on those 2 items.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move to item 9A, which is old business, discussion of a possible response to the May 15th letter from... I'm going to skip that for now because there's a lot of people here that want to talk about the park. We'll get to that later. This is the Kensington Fire Protection District letter concerning a legal opinion, a request for a legal opinion to build a public safety building in Kensington Park, and this is for action. Yes. Okay.
So, Director Deppie and myself are the board committee in terms of working on the public safety building, and it was understood that because the KFPD made a formal request concerning the legal opinion, which we did not take action on by consensus, the process should continue, however, so that we're in communication, and it is my suggestion that Director Deppie and I prepare a letter for outlining future considerations and information that we feel that we need that we can present to the rest of the board and the public. So while we have ongoing discussions with Director Nagel and Vice President Dahmer, we just wanted to make sure that we had formal communications so that the entire board could continue to be informed. So that is my suggestion at this time.
Point of order. Last meeting was explicitly said we could not take action. In fact, the lawyer said it was only a discussion item. So you cannot essentially be saying by consensus we declined to take action. Or if you are implying we took action, that is violation of the Brown Act. And this consensus is then a secret ballot.
Okay. Well, then perhaps I am incorrect in my statement. I would also say that at the bottom under conclusion and recommendation, it shouldn't say we believe, it should be I suggest. That was back in the time when I had hoped to issue this item with Director Deppie, but we were unable to do so.
And if I may add to that, the Kensington Police Protection and Community Service District has several roles, and one of them, in one of our fiduciary duties, is protection of the park, as well as responsibility for the garbage contract, and also obviously the very important overseeing of the police department. I took a look at the Public Safety Building Facility Assessment and Master Plan, and that was presented to the community on June 24th of 2017. And I wanted to see if it had a site assessment, as General Manager Concenturas had explained to me and Julie when we met in late April. It doesn't identify why a site in the park was chosen. It just presents the current site and the site in the park. And it doesn't explain why it selected this site in the park. I understand from when the presentation was made to our board on March 28th that there was a 0.6 acre footprint in the park, but when I look at the drawings, I see that there's a parking lot that would be behind the building with a road that connects somewhere. It's somewhat like the Immaculate Conception parking lot, because I don't know how the cars get to the parking lot without some kind of road that will lead to them. And it would appear that the road would be coming from between the tot lot and the library, which is an area where there's a whole lot of kids that are around on a pretty frequent basis. So that is something of concern. And what General Manager Concenturas had explained, that what you do for a proper site analysis is you identify what your needs are. You identify things like spatial needs, the size of the lot that you might need, concerns about seismic, concerns about vehicle access, impacts on traffic, impacts on pedestrians, response time, parking, and so on. This site has been suggested in part as the center of the town. But just on Googling, it would take 2 more minutes to get down to Santa Fe and Oakview compared to the current site. And other sites seem to be comparable, but it is a little bit of a problem there. I understand that the attraction for building in a new location is that neither the police department nor the fire department need to worry about temporary quarters while the building is built, but at the same time, I did speak to Jean Durham, and Jean has a Bachelor of Geology from Cal and a Master's in Paleontology. She and her husband, Wyatt Durham, who was a distinguished professor of paleontology at Cal, as well as Larry Mannion, did a study. I believe the study was conducted in 1988. And she told me that they mapped Kensington between Wellesley and Arlemont to look for possible faults. And they did that by looking at soil discrepancies, much like the report that was done for the fire district recently. And there are two faults running roughly parallel to Arlington, and one goes behind the annex, and the other one goes below the tennis courts. Well, this building is being proposed in the area right below the tennis courts. And she asked the question, what do we accomplish by moving the building? It's just like the California School of Death, which moved from the Hayward Fault in Berkeley to the Hayward Fault in Fremont. We're not accomplishing much with that. So I am asking Directors Debbie and Sheriff Watt to help draft a response to the fire district and asking them to do a site analysis. And I want to make clear that the Kensington Police Board is very interested in working closely with the fire board. It is a significant challenge. We both want a home, and ideally we'd like a home together. So we are very interested, but we do have a separate fiduciary duty that they don't have, which is the fiduciary duty of the protection of the park. And with that, I'm going to open it up to public comments. Thank you.
I'm Paula Black, and I wanted to speak to the board and also to the community about the effect of a public safety building being relocated to the park. And I'm speaking in particular about the special nature of the park to families in Kensington with children and with school-age children. I want to talk about the special nature of the park and also some safety concerns that I have about both a construction site and subsequently a public safety building being located in proximity to the park. In terms of the special nature of the park, I think those who have perhaps had children here in Kensington understand that the park and the area above and below it effectively acts as a connected campus for our children. From Kensington Hilltop School, through the community centre, through the KCC annex, the playing fields, the wild and woolly area behind the library that holds a special place in children's play, through to the library itself, and down here to this church where some nursery schools are. In the morning, this area is really busy with children going backwards and forwards, being dropped off, parents ferrying kids back and forward. And after about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's extremely busy from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 6 or 7 at night with children, and particularly unaccompanied children, going from activity to activity within the park. And that actually is part of what makes the park tremendously special. There are so few places now where our children can be safely left, unaccompanied, have a measure of independence, be set out into the woods to play. And the reason for that is actually ties directly to my second concern. It's not that parents feel their children being kidnapped. It's that the biggest danger to children is traffic. Traffic, cars, the volume of cars, the size of vehicles that we have these days are the main reason that you don't see kids riding their bikes and walking unaccompanied around our communities in the way they did when I was a kid, and I'm sure when most of you were children. So I'm worried about putting a public safety building in there, taking away the trees and the forest that exist behind the library, where none of us go, but Kensington children build tree forts and get to play unaccompanied and unsupervised by helicopter parents. And I'm really concerned about adding more traffic to what is already an over-trafficked area. that leads off a really horrible junction. We're all of us aware that this crossroads out here outside the church is really problematic. Every year we have near misses with children or parents or people in a hurry nearly colliding with pedestrians. And at the last meeting that we had, I know that both the fire board members who were here expressed their view that nobody wants to cause traffic problems, and that of all people, police and safety officers would be careful. I just want us to think about what it means to add emergency vehicles, to add police cars going in and out by the library, to add people coming to visit the police department when you have kindergartners and first graders or goofy fourth graders running down that hill from KCC to get to the library. So I think that any plan going forward would need to, and I do feel I'm speaking on behalf of the parent community here, would need to show Kensington residents in general and parents in particular that you've thought about those issues and that you've got a good way of mitigating or addressing them. I don't know whether that means relocating further down in the park so you're not accessing from behind the library. Whatever the solution is, I just am really concerned about adding a public safety building right there.
Thank you.
Can I ask a location clarification? So I'm looking on my phone just at the map. Microphone, please. Sorry. So just so you know, I'm looking at my phone at the set review, the picture from that part of the review, and just so to make sure when we're talking about the part where, like, we're talking about that massive wall of rock that is where Arlington Lane and Arlington intersect, right? Not the park proper.
I don't think it's a rock.
I mean, it's a big hill. Yeah. I just want to make sure because the park actually, when I talk to some people, their notion was that we're building in the park, they think we're building right by the tennis courts, and it's actually very different. We're building, yeah. Well, the fire board is proposing it, not we, I mean, we in the royalty, of course. Right.
Well, I think that that would be part of the letter and the detailed site analysis that we would be looking so that people would have an accurate pinpointing of location, so there's not confusion.
It's 97-94 with 4 minutes to go with the Warriors in the lead, so.
Please use microphone.
My name is Ciara Wood. I am deeply appalled. I'm appalled at the presumption of members of the fire board. This is a covet your neighbor's property. This is coveting your neighbor's property. What is attractive about this site? It's not built on. And for some people in the building trades, the value of property is if there's something built on it. So what we consider to be open space is merely a site waiting to be improved to some fire board members. In 1994 and in 1995, this community, and when I say this community, I mean the totality of this community, was involved in a very deep campaign to save Kensington Park. And we had, because of the way things worked out, we had to make a second vote for the hillside property. Now, we saw the hillside property as being valuable open space. There is no other open space in Kensington. From the outlook, the ad of that time, urging people to vote yes on Measure E, this is what the community understood that they were voting on. The last chance to preserve the final 2 acres of Kensington Park's open space. A yes vote results in the ownership of a wonderful community park forever. A yes vote stops private developers from buying parcel B of the park
building 5 new hilltop homes, and constructing new roads across the ball court and picnic area in our park. Once Kensington owns the 8-acre park finally, we can discuss and design what we want in our park, not outsiders. A yes vote approving a $29 per parcel tax for 25 years assures Kensington's willingness to preserve all of Kensington Park. Each of us will benefit by purging all of Kensington Park. This passed by 70.3% at the same time that this community voted by over 76% to increase funding for the police. Part of the reason that I am outraged by all of this is it's just too simple to say, well, our side isn't looking, but look at that land there. We are not sure how messing with that hillside would disrupt it. So I'm really concerned about the board, whether or not the board will basically set aside a vote of this proportion, getting a 70% vote following almost a 78% vote. This is huge. And I really think that the park needs to be maintained. It is sacrosanct. And I'm deeply offended not only by the initial presumption, but after a focused letter writing campaign a year ago or more, the site was taken off the list of options. And I was called by the fire chief. But you see, this didn't apply to Mr. Dahmer's mind. In his mind, that was always available land for his project. I really urge the board to be very aware of this, because this will set off a major community battle and struggle, which we tried to avoid by handling it quietly at first, and perhaps that was just a mistake. But, we'd really rather not have to fight this campaign.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I wish the two people who had just spoken so passionately had said the same thing to the fire board last night. It's for both boards to hear.
Thank you. My name is John Sullivan. I actually think I met Ciara during those years when the challenge was to buy a piece of property that the Richmond School District was wanting to sell. They were in deep trouble. There was considerable rumor that it was going to be developed as condominiums. And the community pulled together, got to know each other in wonderful new ways, and took this community through an educational process in which we determined that this was our chance to have a park. We had a small piece of property with a community center. This was our chance to build a park. A couple of years ago, I think it was, I got wind of this plan to develop a new public safety building on this property. Jim Watt and I called Don Dahmer, and we went over. Don was very courteous and invited us in and showed us the considerable work he had done. The fire district had invested funds in that work. And I left that meeting with a couple of impressions. Don is a skilled architect who specializes in public safety buildings. Much of his career has been that. He's a talented man of considerable passion, and the work he showed us was impressive work. But it began, as Ciara alluded to, with seeing a piece of property that was empty, and he had a vision to fill it. And out of that vision came an inadequate assessment, a blue sky assessment of what could be done on the current property. The project he was proposing was an impressive public safety building. I left discomforted by the fact that this skilled professional was also serving in a public position with fiduciary responsibilities. And I felt he had fallen in love with this vision and was convincing this board that this was the only way to act. And now I see the fire board, after going through an election, I have to say, in which I questioned the candidates and didn't get a clear answer that we had to build on this parkland. Now I see the fire board very aggressively approaching the police board, giving them deadlines for participation. And I have to tell you, I find it offensive. This is a serious problem we have to solve. But I do not think we solve it with a vanity project. I think we solve it with a thorough professional assessment of what we need and what the options are, and we need to look at all of those together. And I have to say to the police board that I am disappointed that you are not moving this issue off the table. And I hope you will give serious consideration to what Eileen talked about, and that is your fiduciary responsibility as a community service district to protect that park. Because right now, there's a lot more aggression coming from the fire board than coming from the police board. And I think we need a balance if we're going to really solve the problem of the public safety building. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should just make a point. We're also a police protection district too, so it's a kind of weird contradiction that we have to balance those. And I do agree it is a difficult problem. I'm not saying either way, but I'm just making a point to remind everyone this is a dual type of district. It's actually quite rare in that sense.
It's actually a community services district. It's been named the Police Protection and Community Services District. I think in the late 90s. It's a little unclear why.
Because it was originally
excuse me, Cyrus, can I talk, please? We are a community services district. You can, you mentioned LAFCO, they'll verify that. It's just someone added the name Police Protection and Community Services District. You can read Kensington past and present, some board comments. It's a little unclear why the name was changed, but the name doesn't mean that we are a Police Protection and Community Services District. Please, we are a Community Services District, period. There is no dual type of district.
Actually, we were formed in 1946 as a police protection district. It's in the KIC book, it's in the government code.
We are going to take one more comment on this, and then we're going to move on.
And then we became a community services district, and that's what we are. Thank you.
Thank you. One more comment on this, on the park.
Good evening, Jim Watt. I haven't agreed with all the previous comments, and I would like to provide yet a further factor for you people to consider. It happens that the city of San Pablo is right now constructing a new building of about 11 to 12,000 square feet, the same size as the size of the building that was in the plans that were developed a couple of years ago for Kensington Park. That building in San Pablo is going to be their new fire station, approximately 12,000 square feet. San Pablo's a town of 30,000 people. That is their single fire station. The fire station is under construction. The cost of that fire station are going to come in at about $13 million. It's on flat land. Can you imagine what the cost of building a new building of similar size in Kensington Park on that hillside that are going to cost? They're going to be extremely more than the $13 million that San Pablo is looking at. I would guess that if this construction gets underway within the next 3 or 4 years, that cost is going to probably come in at about $20 million.
I'm sorry, somebody's shoving needles in my face. Thank you, go ahead.
Will probably come in at about $20 million, and we're going to have to go out for financing. This is an extraordinary sum of money to be paying to go into this location. Not only do we have the factors that we just heard about to consider, we also have that cost factor. We have to start asking ourselves whether or not, if we're going to have to pay that kind of money, whether or not we should even have a police station, and in fact shouldn't contract that service out to El Cerrito. Because we've been told by the president of our Kensington Fire District that we can probably handle our fire operations within the existing 5,500 square feet. So I would like to point out to those who are pushing for this large building that, in my opinion, if we're going to go in that direction, we really need to start thinking about other options for our police force. So instead of going to a $20 million cost, we can fix up the building that we have, and we're done. Thank you.
Okay, Jim was the last comment.
Oh, I just have a quick comment. I was the president of the Kensington
Is it on the park and the building in the park?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I was the president of the Kensington Community Council when the park issue was first brought to the community's attention. And just by happenstance, I just happened to be in sort of the right place at the right time. And we were very fortunate to have set the ball rolling. And then when I realized that the acquisition needed to be completed by the Services District Board, that was what inspired me to run for the Services District Board. And it was while I was on the board that the purchase was completed. And Ciara is right, it was a considerable effort. John is right, Chris Sorensen was there for all of it. It was a considerable effort. But I also want to say that Cyrus is correct. The board is a dual board. The reason that the name was changed,
at the beginning,
yes,
of this.
the reason that the name was changed was because in the 1990s, the mid-1990s.
You know, that's a side issue. We were talking about the.
I want to clarify that the name was changed to the Police Protection and Community Services District so that the district could qualify for grant money. Because it was important to clarify for the state, for state funding. I believe it may have been COPS funding that somebody's just said yes. Ciara, yes. And so the COPS funding is about $150,000 a year to the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion?
Could I make a motion that, excuse me, let me put my glasses on to read what I did. A motion that a formal response should be written by directors Debbie and myself, presented to the KFPD in time to be agendized for their July 10th meeting.
May I ask what the contents of this response would be?
The details, well, we would incorporate all the suggestions we've heard here tonight, or try some of to incorporate, but much of the question is contained in the process. It's involved a site analysis. We are wondering about locations around Kensington and why they were excluded specifically.
So if we're so curious about that, why don't we pay for it? Why are we constantly punting the ball? Let's put our mouth where our money is.
I will second your motion.
The reason being because they currently own the public safety building and have managed this process.
So if they kick us out, what do we do?
Well, I could take you through the cafeteria plan of actions, but I'm not going to right now.
Do you have a plan? How do we deal with that?
Absolutely, I do. But that would
elaborate?
Well,
How are we going to sword these services?
I'm going to take a vote on this. Vice President Desai? Aye. Director Cheryl Swat?
Yes.
Director Duffy?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
No, I'm not going. I'm going to clarify, even though that's going to all fall out of the minutes. I'm not going to vote on something I don't actually know what the contents of are, and frankly, it feels that the police district is now kicking this problem and trying to stall to the point where we actually risk a bigger problem. We can do all these things in parallel. I'm sympathetic to the park people too, because when I ran, I also was like, the park is dead last option, and is essentially like they have to prove a compelling case. I'm also very much of the realization that having a park if we do not have a safe community is sort of a moot point. So I have to balance those two requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on now to 9. I voted yes, and so the measure passes 4-1. Sorry, thank you. I'm going to move on to 9B, which is to authorize the general manager to execute 3 change orders with KCK Builders to replace floors in meeting rooms 1 and 2, and a full detailed lighting plan. We will do it at the when we get through with the business. We need to move on to business. I'm going to ask Vice President.
I'm sorry, point of order. The President has the floor.
Vice President Hasai, can you speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, is it on now?
No.
Okay, I'm trying to.
The battery may have died. Sorry. So just to sum up for people, when we did the first contract, awarded the first contract for the community center renovation to the Eagle Builders Group, included in that was a decision by the board to also authorize a change order of up to $45,000 to replace meeting room floors 1 and 2. And that came about because after we did the alts for the contract for the renovation, we chose to fix the meeting room floor in meeting room 3, which has a large crack in it, and also to replace the floor in the main hall, because at this point, if you don't do it now, it becomes much, much more expensive to do it in the future. When we awarded the contract to Eagle Builders, we authorized a change order of up to $45,000. When we subsequently learned that Eagle Builders did not return a signed contract and was in default, we went to the next bidder, which was KCK Builders, and we awarded them the contract. But at that time, we did not include the meeting rooms 1 and 2. And so we are now going back to do that. And subsequently, we also learned that some of the drawings, when they were converted from CAD to PDF, lost some detail. So we have gotten a change order that actually is less than the original estimate from Eagle Builders. It is only $37,000, exactly $36,700, but we're rounding up to $37,000 for rounder numbers. And that includes meeting rooms 1 and 2 new floors, as well as the fixing of the plan and implementation of the more detailed drawing, which had gotten dropped in the conversion from CAD to PDF. So we are swapping out a $45,000 change order to a $37,000 change order. And also, at this point, as we do have a signed contract, change orders will come out of the contingency funds that are part of that contract, so there's no need for any additional monies to be appropriated. They are wrapped up in the contract that we awarded to to KCK, but we need to authorize the change order.
Am I correct, and also it's the flooring in the hallway that will be replaced too?
That is already in the contract as part of the alts that we authorized, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Are there any board comments on this?
I hope that's going to be written up and added because, in fact, given that the video is no longer retained, this report will, like in 5 years, will lack on proof, and it is a board report that should be retained in some shape or form.
There's this document in our board packet.
But your report, what you said.
Well, pretty much what I said is really in here. I'm just expressing it more colloquially.
I've got a question about, it says a document, however, included a statement added by KCK that council advised that we are not to accept. I'm just curious what that's about.
I actually don't know what the phrasing was. I just know that because the contract, it's a very rigorous process, and so whatever they wanted to add, we couldn't add.
Sure. And it said a signed contract should be received prior to tonight. Is that the case?
Have you received that? I understood that it was signed, but I'm not the one in receipt of it. The signed KCK contract has been received.
We don't have the latest revision of it yet. We have the original only.
Wait, there is no revision.
Oh, so then we do have it.
Yeah.
Okay, so it includes the change order then. The change order.
Well, that's what we're doing now.
So we do have that, the original.
We have the contract that we awarded on the 16th.
Correct.
And now we're talking about a separate item. Oh, sure.
I would like to make a motion to approve the change order to the contract with KCK Builders for $37,700. It's even, in here it says 37. Okay, so for $37,000. This order is to be funded by using contingency funds allocated in the construction costs in the capital projects budget.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, I'm going to take roll call. Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Shira Swat?
Aye.
Director Deppie?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
Present.
And I will vote for it, so the measure passes 4-0. All right. We're going on to new business, so we can complete this work. The first item is the fiscal year budget. General Manager Constanturis, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, Madam President, the budget was presented at the last meeting of the Board of Directors, and it has been presented 2 times to the Finance Committee on May the 2nd and June 4th. The Finance Committee did recommend adoption of the budget by the Board of Directors at their last meeting. The budget itself, just to highlight a few of the items, first of all, it does include the funding for the community center that has been discussed at previous meetings, and it probably needs to be updated based on the KCK, the latest information from KCK. We also have $250,000 in debt financing that was approved by the board and has been received now also. So this project can proceed forward. There is funding for the projected increases in retirement and OPEB costs. They're hard to predict. We only know that they're going to be higher, but what the exact numbers are really guesses at this point. But we have included substantial increases for those costs in our long-term projections. The public safety building has been discussed earlier in the evening, so I won't give any additional comments. The fire board is the lead agency on that project. The police services study is, there has not been yet a decision on how to proceed, but this was presented about 2 months ago, about a month and a half ago to the board. And the RFP is being drafted to seek information and proposals from neighboring cities. Probably the RFP will be presented to the board just as an information item at the next meeting. This proposed budget also includes significant staffing for the police department, changes in staffing, which, based on current recruitments, if successful, we will be able to fill most of the police positions, and that is our intent. It also includes staffing for a temporary police chief, which I updated the board just a few minutes ago. The budget also includes provision for the administrative study implementing the positions approved by the board some months ago, and that includes funds for a professional recruiter to handle the process of recruiting and filling the positions. I included $15,000 in the budget for the recruiter, but it probably will cost a little bit more. I've talked to a couple of the recruiters, probably about $17,000 for the recruitment for the low bidder. And that this budget also includes some provision for the continuation of the policy and procedures manual completion. A couple of the sections have been presented and adopted by the board. One of them is being, some changes to one of them is being recommended this evening. The budget also, if you look at page 6, it does show that it's a very tight budget on these provisions. It's almost zeroes out the revenue and expenditures, a very small expenditure projection. Our past has been that we've had more remaining funds than we budgeted, so we're hopeful this trend continues into next year, but I do want to point out that it is a very tight budget. And the pie charts on 7 and 8 indicate that most of the revenue for the district comes from property taxes, and that the police are the largest recipient, being a police district, of the revenue and the largest expenditures for the district. The remainder of the budget does include some key accomplishments and major goals for the next year. I wanted the new positions are included on page 20. We had some rounded some of the positions, the actual numbers, and I think there may be some comment from board members on that, because some of the positions are based on how much was spent for the position, so you have some that are at in the thousands of a percent. It's basically based on on expenditures, and we'd be happy to answer any questions on those. We do have a 5-year projection on page 21. The 5-year projection does show that in the later years, the budget, well, it will continue to be at a very close number, let's say. In the later years, we were showing a deficit, small deficits, but still a deficit in years 4 and 5. It's based on the assumptions we made on the budget in the future years. We think those are reasonable projections, reasonable assumptions. They could change. They could, I think there's some feeling we might have a recession within the next 2 years. We don't know exactly what will happen. But we are taking kind of a middle of the road. We're not being optimistic and we're not being pessimistic in these projections. We're just trying to be as realistic as possible. So the remaining parts of the budget provide details, and we also have the appropriations limit calculation, which is included in the budget, and it's an additional agenda item. And there's a resolution for the board's consideration to adopt the budget, and that will complete the budget process. And the resolution will be the record of the approval of the budget. I want to know, we have two people that did most of the work on this, which is Bill Zanoni and Debbie Russell in the audience, if you have any questions. You know, Debbie's been doing it for many years and is our accountant and knows where all the numbers fit together, and Bill is our budget guy who's helped put this, all this material together. So with that, I'll send it back to the president.
May I have permission to give a quick overview of what this handout is? Okay, so this won't take too long. Really, all it was is I was motivated to go and look back at previous trends of all the audited financials. 17-18 is from the draft audit we just approved, I believe it was last meeting, and then the 18-19 projections are directly from the budget document. And really, it's just sort of, you see the trends of legal consultants, how I believe it's last fiscal year we achieved a new high in Kensington, yay. And then just because I was kind of curious, because legal I always see as one form of consulting, so when you sum those together, it's actually like legal and consulting together really haven't budged as an item, which I do hope that as the projections show, we are on a downward trend for that. The next one, which is the police car stuff, is really just more of a red flag I wanted to bring up, given that the board is not even discussing or does not seem to have budgeted in any way for police car replacement. And really the point is we have one car that's 17 years old to the point it's not even equipped with police technology that is now used. And we have another car over 100,000 miles, and as the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, notes, that after that point you can have the risk of catastrophic mechanical failure, which creates a negligence issue for us. For those who are not as well versed in police operations, I'm still learning too. Idle hours is a special measurement that police cars do, and they measure how long they are sitting, like with their engine running, because that still creates wear and tear. This is normal for police operations. It's how they do their traffic control. It's how they do all that. We're ready to run at a moment's notice if we get a call while we're sitting. So the point is, it's another car statistic that most people would not think about, but it's particular to police operations. Don't worry, police cars are slightly modified to handle that a bit better, but also red flag that creates a lot of wear and tear on the engines. Lastly, I just sort of had gone through and I was curious about the administrative stuff, and this is really, most of it replicates the administrative study, but I just sort of did it for my own edification. And it actually brings up something when we get to item 808 I'd like to pull and just discuss in a bit more detail. Anyway, that's any quick questions?
What is item 808?
Item 808 is administrative staffing costs. So, but yeah, the big point being, we need new police cars because we are now in a serious state.
I think General Manager Concentrate should think about developing a plan for vehicle replacements.
Yeah, I had thought that was going to be part of this year's budget, so I'm a little surprised that it's not here at this point. I don't know at what point it dropped out. May I?
Yes, please.
I just have a couple of things to point out. Based on today's actions on page 19 of the budget, the item under project construction cost that says replace floors in meeting rooms 1 and 2 can be stricken there completely because it is part of the base contract as being taken out of the contingency. And of course dropped to $37,000, but it does not need to be additive at this point, so that is a savings. I didn't have a chance to go back over to I'm just surprised to see the rank of corporal in the authorized staffing. I guess I didn't know that it was so specific and still there. So I circled it and hadn't had a chance to go back and review previous documents on that, so if there's any.
Can I go back to your page 19?
Yeah.
The figure of the base contract, $1,531,400. That includes the 15% contingency, so that's why by removing the $45,000, it's already included in that base.
Correct.
Price. Okay.
Correct. Are these the right numbers, Bill, from KCK? These are the updated numbers?
I believe so.
Okay.
I have some questions, man.
I'm not.
Budget.
quite done.
Okay, when is she done? Just checking.
Okay, I'm back to see those are my only notations.
Okay, so I'll start with the lighthearted one, then move to the more serious ones. First off, does anyone know who Cyrus Mondavi is? Because he seems to be happening a lot, and he seems to be on this board. Page 1, and in all the resolutions throughout this entire agenda package. Can someone spell my last name for me, please?
I'm sympathetic, it happened to me too.
It took me several years to get my name straightened with the district, so I can understand that. Okay, so there's an extra N on page 1.
And it's
It
throughout.
never happens to me, my name is always spelled correctly.
And also, I think Len Welsh is on the board still for some reason, because I believe one of the budgetary resolutions, or one of the ones, I think the appropriation one, has him on it. I'm trying to remember which one, but I do remember one of the resolutions in this package, there's Len Welsh and Cyrus Mondavi. Yes, yeah. Anyway, moving on to the, I was been for the general manager about the budget. So first off, I was wondering, what is the Irish? Oh, wait. Huh? I'm waiting for the general manager to. So I was curious, how much is the new ICOP going to be, the hourly rate, and how long are we budgeting for that?
I'm sorry, for what?
The ICOP, interim chief of police.
Well, the interim chief of police, since it's likely to be a retiree, will be subject to the 960-hour limitation. So whoever is hired under that limitation will be limited to that. If they work less than full-time, they might be able to stretch it to 7 months or possibly 8 months. After that, we hope to have made a decision on how to move forward and not need the position, but there might be a need to fill another temporary position after that if the board decides not to, it wants more additional time to consider the alternatives and options for police services.
I mean, how much is the hourly are we working on?
For the hourly?
Yeah.
Do you know, Debbie, the hourly rate? We're limited by law to whatever the current rate is. I think it's $123,000 a year.
That was 129, or 128, 129 was our current yearly rate.
Is it, I think, is it 129? I think it's
Do you have that salary sheet?
We can get that to you, but it's limited by law, though. We have no choice.
And you're still on 95 per hour because we have to pass any sort of like CPI or, because your contract says we have to pass an amendment for like increasing your rate. I was trying to make sure I'm going through the numbers right. So 95, or is it been CPI increase?
My rate?
Yeah.
Has not been changed.
Okay.
I worked for the same rate for the last 2 years.
Okay. And then I guess another one, this is more a cash flow question, it's actually going to be concerning me, is so I believe now our reserves after we signed this contract are at about 1 million, correct? Our available reserves.
I think so. It's, yeah.
Well, our available reserves are 2.3 million, but they're unassigned funds, cash balance, okay.
Unassigned cash balance.
Is
About 1.1 million.
okay, unassigned cash balance is about 1.1 million.
And so.
General fund, thank you.
And I can answer that question, assuming this is the most recent that we have, it would be for the hourly rate.
To the, yeah, sorry.
Just to answer,
Yeah, Tom. Right?
Okay, hello? Okay, it doesn't have light up. To answer the question about the hourly rate, currently the temporary chief would be at $59.13 per hour.
59.
13.
Okay. And also, so we have 1.1 in reserves, and I guess my question was, when we get to November, what is our cash reserves going to be at?
So,
Our available cash reserves. I understand we have some sort of like sigmoidal function to our reserves.
well, I'll turn, I don't know if we have that figure today. We can provide, we can let you know.
I guess, because at like a previous meeting, I heard the numbers usually we lead out to about $850,000 as we go from top to peak. And so I'm just wondering if our reserves are at 1.1, are we actually sufficiently, going to be remain solvent enough, which is actually a concern when we bleed our reserves this low.
Well, we will remain solvent, but the exact number, I don't have that tonight, but we can get that for you.
And that's unassigned, that's not our complete.
Well, it's because it has to be unrestricted, because, if we're paying the bills, we can't use restricted money for the bills.
May I ask a question? I'm sorry, I had to miss the second finance meeting unexpectedly. And can you remind me, Debbie, 672 Kensington Park, operation and maintenance, what the 94,600 contained?
It's on page 24.
15. With the detail, right? So
You're asking what the 94,000 is?
yes, what we have put in that 94,600.
Okay, it's quite a few things. There are some shared expenses, so it's what we use to run the old park and the new park. There are, so I can just read quickly, there's the maintenance contract, park maintenance, utilities, drain clearing, incidental expenses. Then there's tree pruning, levy fees, engineer's report. I guess there's no levy fees listed this year. Park restroom, custodian, new park tree pruning and removal of poison oak, that was 30,000, that's a new item. And the park survey is 5,000, that was also new.
The custodian item I noticed is quite low because of the closure of the building, so we saved, it's only 17 or we saved 17. I think we saved 17.
Yes, I think it was 22,000.
Right, so we've saved $17,000 on that line. Can you also talk a little bit about how much is assigned for tree pruning?
So we have old park tree pruning listed at 2,000, that's a holdover from the year before. And then we have new park tree pruning and removal of poison oak is 30,000.
So a total of 32?
Yes. And I can respond, not to an exact figure, but I just wanted to say for the cash reserves, the issue is just timing of cash. We are allocated our full revenue July 1st, and then we receive the money 3 times a year in chunks. Basically, after you pay your tax bill in mid-December it comes, and then April, and then a little cleanup in June. I will say that I don't know what the cost is, but the county, if you were ever in a pinch, the county allows you to borrow against what you already have as revenue. There is some financing involved, but I think some counties will do that because if there's a shortage of cash, but you know it's coming, that is an option.
Okay, just in case, especially with this community center stuff, you might need to be careful about that.
I want to assure you on the community center that the funding for that is all squirreled away and separated out, and that was part of the requirement that we have that funding available. That is not reserve funding. Those are dedicated funds to that and are going to be in a segregated capital account. So that does not affect the reserve.
I mean, change orders and stuff may add up.
But the change order is, like I said, part of the base contract of $1.5 million because it includes a 15% contingency. So the reserve is available if we go above the amount in the contract for contingency, but we have to use up the amount that's already part of in the contract for that. So we did think about that.
And I just want to remind you, I'm not sure where it is in the agenda, but approval of this budget will reestablish the capital fund that was done away with year before last. So right now, currently in 18-19, we do not have a capital fund separated, but there is that motion to move the reserves we've saved towards the community center into, you know, whatever's left over into its own, which is what you're talking about.
And I have a question, actually, probably for Bill Zanoni about the capital account, because we, in the part of the financing, they requested and required a separate account for those loan proceeds. And I am wondering if the capital account that we established is only restricted to be used for the community center, or if those are two different items, the account where those funds are kept versus our capital account.
Our thought was that we would spend $250,000 first, but part of the action before you this evening is to establish a capital fund. We'll move, for accounting purposes, we'll move whatever's left of what's already been appropriated or set aside by the board into that account.
For capital purposes, I mean,
It'll all be for the community center.
Right, because if there's other capital needs, and we have only one capital account, like for example, I don't know if they would take a police car out of a capital account or what else they might take, but I want to be really careful and clear about the purpose of the account and whether the construction funds must be segregated, and if should we need another capital account, is there capital account A and capital account B?
The way the resolution is written this evening, it's reestablishing the capital account for this project. Going forward, you can use it, once this project is complete, you can use it for whatever you want, but the action this evening is setting up a capital fund for the community center project.
Would we have a need to set up another capital account only if there was another big project, or could there be other capital needs that we might find ourselves having to set up a secondary capital?
Certainly, if you want to track the money separately, that's a good way to do it. But this is a big project, and it makes sense to not. It's much easier to, as we've seen.
Is this for any expense to the project or only hard construction costs?
Anything for the project from now until it's finished.
All those other accounts will transfer over.
Are we great? Can I just clarify? The capital fund that you're talking about, the capital account that the 250 is going into, is a separate bank account at the county. But the capital fund is general fund versus capital fund, which is an accounting thing, and would be, if you reestablish it, used for other capital purchases, as in a car or whatever, would run through the capital fund. I or whoever is doing accounting can keep track of those projects separately. You would not, I don't think, have a separate capital fund. You would have projects within the capital fund, accounting-wise.
Since we're paying interest on the loan, and since we get a tiny bit of interest in the capital account when the county holds our money, could we make sure that we bleed down the loan before we start using our capital fund?
That's what Bill just said, that the loan will go first.
Yeah, and then when we get the WW grant back, maybe that's money that we could start using for the vehicle replacement fund too.
Yes, or it may need to go into the project, but that's true that there's $158,000 to be reimbursed to us, and that will be something we'll try to do as soon as possible.
I wanted to note that we did discuss the vehicle replacement fund, and we wanted to include funds this coming year because there is a need in the police department to start replacing the vehicles and having a plan. The budget this coming year was so tight that we delayed it for a year. So we did include funds in 2021 and 22, 23 to replace vehicles. They may have to be augmented, but we did put $30,000 and are included in the 5-year projections each of those years. The plan is to replace a police vehicle every other year and not let these vehicles just fill this huge mileage. So we do have a plan. It's a year later than what we preferred to do it, but it is included.
Thanks.
Could we go to account 808?
Yes.
So the administrative positions in general, I understand are phase transitions, so those are actually hard to quantify. I just want to make sure I'm getting my math right. So The general manager is at 0.375 FTEs, meaning that he's only working some fraction of the year, which is a lot less than the 0.5 we normally budget in for, correct?
He's on, hang on a second, what page are you on?
I'm on page 20, and in reference to, I believe it's reference, it's a cross-reference page, 808.
Okay, I'm gonna let Bill take this to see if it's.
That's correct, Cyrus.
Yeah. So last year when we were at 0.5, we budgeted around 100,000 for you, correct?
I believe so, yes.
But then when I was looking over the actual source documents that generated the numbers in the worksheet, we're still budgeting you for 100,000 even though you're at 0.375 hours.
Well, this assumes that these other positions will be filled, and they will result in less need to have the general manager do some of the work that the others would do, and that's what the savings would be.
Anyway, I'm just, that's not really how a budget works.
I think I indicated in the finance committee that it really is going to be probably 2 years before this is completely straightened out, so it isn't going to be immediately right at the beginning of the fiscal year.
So we are adding about a $30,000 increase to administrative salaries based on just the administrative study. The assumption of a lot of savings were consultant savings, though I hope the downward trend remains based on like the other plots I've been looking at.
That is the plan.
But so either way, it seems we're going to be incurring more costs in administrative functions.
And I think that there'll probably be savings after 2 years, because the office will be working more efficiently, doing work that we just weren't staffed appropriately to be able to handle.
Such as?
Well, you mentioned one of them earlier, the web.
And we mentioned that was already being done by staff
Well,
already.
that was in the past. And then the board has assisted on a number of projects, and you're aware that the board members have been doing some work.
Have the district administrator indicated she cannot handle that workload? Or is this their choice to take on these tasks?
Well, that's the decision of the general manager, so.
So you've authorized the board to take over day-to-day ministerial tasks?
Well, I didn't authorize it to take day-to-day ministerial tasks.
Website is day-to-day ministerial tasks.
Well, we do have someone who knows website management, and we did convert to a new website, so there's already been some major improvements and accomplishments on the website.
But is it his job to continue this?
We want to not continue that. No. We want to have the new positions take over the board, some of the work that the board is doing.
I mean, and who's making the agendas right now and writing these agenda packets?
Currently, the president is assisting with getting them out.
Again, has the district administrator indication he cannot do the workload?
Well, one of the reasons why we started doing this was because the staff was exceeding their budgeted hours. And indeed, even with taking some of these task overs, staff was continuing to exceed budgeted hours.
Actually, I did some of those calculations. I didn't bring them with me. I can submit them. But it seems the general manager is consistently exceeding, and right now staff is just about right, or staff was at the same level as the general manager. And on top of that, we run into this weird thing that like beforehand, when we had only 2 staff, GM, COP, and the district administrator, this was not like a sudden massive budget issue. And so I'm kind of perplexed, where is this only now a crisis when it was not before?
Well, I wouldn't call it a crisis, but there's work being done that has not been done in the past.
Such as?
Well, the procedure and policy manual has been changed for the first time.
Even though Linda Lipscomb's board had been working on it, and that wasn't really derailed.
This was adopted.
Well, it was never presented to the board.
So that's...
It was presented to the public.
Can I finish my comments? There was something that, I think the first time in many decades that was completed. Secondly, the community center is getting done. And without assistance from the board members, we would not be at the point where we are now. And it has not been an easy project.
But the history of the community center has been every time the general manager
Next,
takes
the
it over.
website has been completed.
May I finish? The history of the community center project is every time a general manager, chief of police started to work on it, the board said, no, we want to do it ourselves. And that's what happened. It went over to the board fidangled with it, and it fell apart. Then the general manager tried to work on it again, and then it came to the board again with Director Asad. That's actually been the history of the series of events.
No, but I'm not going to argue the point. You're incorrect.
How so?
I'm not going to argue the point. Currently, I'm going to actually speak to the page 20 authorized staffing. First of all, I want to say tremendous thanks to Deborah Russell, Bill Zanoni, and Tony Constantoros, because this was a fun read today, yesterday, and I have to say, it's an excellent work product. And I went through this week 10 years of budgeting for the KPPCSD, and was just, this is outstanding, and I really thank you. You brought us to a whole other level. I know we're continuing to evolve and add documents, but readability, understandability for the layperson and the tired board member is exceptional. The only, and I do apologize, I did miss this last finance meeting, or I would have brought up a couple of things there. I do know that, unfortunately, the fiscal year 2018-19 budget for authorized staffing on page 20 has some inaccuracies based on what our adopted budget was last year. And so I want to make, when the motion is made, I'd like to make a clarification. What occurs, and I'll give this to you, Debbie and Bill, that the police services aide position, which of course in 1819 was divided among police and parks and recreation, was in this budget listed as 0.4 and then 0.25. That is incorrect according to what was authorized last year. Last year, under police, it was 0.4, excuse me, that was correct. And then under what was budgeted was 0.13. So I would recommend that we change the, excuse me, it is under police services aid, parks and recreation, 0.25 should be 0.13. And then in the proposed budget, I think that number, my understanding from the general manager was that he was seeking to replicate the exact same hours there, just moving the entire position to under the police, so that it should be 0.53 rather than 0.65 there.
Okay.
And I will include that as part of the motion, clearly saying that we're just trying to replicate the hours.
I think we
So-
had another discussion, so would you like to make a motion?
Oh, and then, yes, and then one other I would like to round up the general manager's hours from 0.375 to 0.4, because that gives us an even 16 hours.
Okay.
Before we go, I have a legal question actually to the legal counsel, since we have them all sitting here. So right now, I am in the knowledge that at least two of the committee, the finance committee meetings were in violation of the ADA rule, because they were happening upstairs in an inaccessible room. Does that somehow impact our voting here tonight, given that those might be out of compliance?
No, the board has the power to adopt a budget, because frankly, it's the board's power to adopt a budget, not the finance committee.
Even though this budget was coming from that committee and they voted to recommend it to the board?
We moved the meeting
The
down.
last one, but the other two?
But it was recommended by the finance committee in the last meeting.
But the first reading came from the recommendation to bring for a first reading came from the other one. I'm just asking on a procedural note.
That was not a first reading, that was just a discussion. There's no first readings in the finance committee, they're only for the board.
Well, I mean, the first reading that came to the board.
No first reading.
It's not like it's a policy and procedure manual. That's your question.
Okay.
Okay. Clerk Sheriff's what?
All right, I would like to make a resolution, a motion, excuse me. I would like to make a motion, and then, of course, a motion that we accept resolution number 2019.
Were you going to accept the budget first?
Well, oh, do you need to do this? Just, I make a motion to approve the budget with the following modifications. That page 20 should reflect actual approved staffing from fiscal year 18-19 adopted budget, so clarifying that column from last year. And that the police services aide non-sworn should be changed to 0.53, as long as that is the same as last year's aide positions combined. And that the general manager's hours should be reassessed at 0.4 hours. And then I'd like to move that we take $4,000 from category 672, which is park operation and maintenance, and move it to 668, which is the annex maintenance. Just $4,000.
I will second the motion.
So before, this is actually important. The resolution as is has typos in the name.
We're not on the resolution, we're on the budget side.
I know, but the budget in which you passed the resolution to accept it has typos in the name, literally. Resolution 19-something.
No, the same resolution appears on the next page, and I just made a motion.
There is a typo in the director's name.
But there have been typos in my name in the past on documents, and they get corrected. This is not the end of the world.
No, this is a legal resolution, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Carl, did you want to speak? Sorry. I didn't see you standing there, sorry.
Can anyone hear me? Okay. I decided to limp up here and at least get some sympathy. I can never get you to vote for anything that I'm recommending, so I decided to settle for sympathy. Anyway, I waited for this to come up because I want to say that I'm endorsing this budget. It wasn't only my motion at the Finance Committee, but I think that we ultimately put together a very good budget. It's very tight at the bottom. I don't agree with us having a police captain. I think we're a small department. We ought to have a lieutenant at a maximum. But other than that, I very much endorse the staffing because I think we're asking our general manager to do a job. And if we are asking that, then we need to give him the people he needs to do the job. So I'm asking you to vote for the budget, for the motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Smith, actually I'm representing the Kensington Property Owners Association, I'm now the president, to be better or worse.
Our sympathies.
Yeah, I know, I expected those to be offered immediately. But anyways, and to start out with, I want to commend the general manager and also Deborah and Bill for doing an exemplary job on this budget. It's very well displayed, the detail on the programs is excellent. Certainly the description and the overview, the accomplishments and the goals looking forward, I think are very good, and it's important to have a 5-year forecast. So we generally support the budget for this year. A few comments. One, I want to get clarity on the WW grant. That will eventually come off of the funding. What you call here the reserve funding, district reserve, $1,090,000. That will actually reduce that at some point.
We will get it back. So the
Right.
WW funding, what page are you looking at?
I think it's 19.
Yeah, let me just take a look.
At one time, it was billed at asterisk.
Yes.
And the asterisk is gone in any reference to it as well.
Yeah, so it would come back into district reserves, I guess. Is that correct, Bill? Yeah.
So in essence, you will end up with $158,000 in reserves in addition to what you have now. So right? That will.
And that could be sometime, basically, once we do the accessibility work and we can bill out $158,000, show the county that we incurred those expenses, we can get it back, and that would be sometime in 2019, hopefully within the first 6 months, but it's hard to say.
Right, so the bottom line, that will improve
Yes.
your bottom line.
Correct.
In your reserves by that amount.
Correct.
Which is important.
Until we spend it.
I wasn't advocating for that, but.
No, but yeah.
No, I agree, yeah, but at least it's important because you will add to your reserves as a result of it. A couple of thoughts from KPOA with regard to the budget forecasting. We note that in the out years, it looks like there are going to be some minor deficits, and yet it's important, and you heard a discussion earlier on about the public safety building. I think it's important that you take into account the public safety building, either a joint tenancy or whether you have to have a standalone police presence, which will also include district administration presence, because you're going to need that as well. So somehow I think it's important to build those costs in whatever way you can in the out years, because it will be, you will be accruing those eventually. So for forecasting, I think it will be a good idea to do that. The vehicle replacement, I think, is also a good point that was made. One thought that the KPOA board also recommended was on these administrative positions, the three that you're taking on, possibly prioritizing the hiring of those, hiring the two, the clerk and the finance and budget manager maybe first, and then possibly the office manager or an office manager at a lower time level, because you are expecting to get some benefit from those two high-level people, in particular the budget and finance manager, which will reduce your consultant costs, as I understand. So it's important to see if that's going to happen, and that's why we were suggesting maybe prioritizing the hiring under those circumstances. Not that we don't want to lose the high-quality consultants that you have, but the whole purpose, of course, of this finance and budget manager is to supplement, take away some of that time, if you will. So anyways, but we commend the work that you've done on this, and we look forward to working with you in the future on budget issues. So thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, so there's a motion on the floor and a second. I'm going to take a vote. Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Shara Swat?
Yes.
Director Depp?
Yes.
Director Bendavi?
No.
Okay, and I will vote yes, so it passes 4-1.
Can I also thank President Natoli for being the chair of the Finance Committee, and also Carl Kruger, Mike Logan, Jim Watt, Paula Black, and Rob Furman, who put in a tremendous amount of work and came to a lot of meetings this spring. So thank you to them very much.
Yes, indeed, they did put in a lot of work, and we're asking more work of them to start the the fiscal year audit sooner, and to do a first quarter budget review, which is a lot of work to do that. So thank you very much. Okay.
Yes, and I will move that we adopt resolution number 2019-08, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District adopting the budget for fiscal year 2019-20, which adopts it again as amended, presented, and also establishes the capital fund.
And I will second that, but I will ask that the district administrator correct the name on this resolution, and then we'll leave it in the public safety building for all of us to sign at a convenient time.
Just for the quick record, she made none of those resolutions.
I didn't say she did. Okay, so I'm going to take a vote. Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Cheryl Swat?
Yes.
Director Debbie?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
No.
Okay, and I will vote yes, so that's 4-1. Right, General Manager Constantouris, can you introduce the annual supplemental special tax for police protection?
The supplemental tax dates back to June 8, 2010, when Measure G was adopted. And there is a 4-year history included in the staff report of the tax and how much it has changed over these years. It was subject to annual review and approval by the board. And the maximum increase is according to the Consumer Price Index for the fiscal year. And that Consumer Price Index this year is 4.014. And on the last page of the staff report, it shows what the new maximum tax, subject to board approval, would be with that 4% addition. So a single family residential, for example, in the current fiscal year is $248.94 a parcel, and the new maximum tax would go from $248 to $258.93 per parcel, as an example of what the increases would be. The anticipated revenue is $588,448.87. And we're recommending that the board go ahead and adopt the maximum recommended allowed by the CPI increase. There is a resolution with the packet for your consideration.
May I ask what the Finance Committee determined on this CPI increase?
I'm sorry?
The Finance Committee, what they recommended?
I don't think we didn't present it.
They did not, okay, form an opinion. Okay.
It's kind of an annual thing that's...
of course, I just didn't know they had. I'm sorry, I'm looking. Well, for the low price, $9.99 each, you can have increase. I would like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-11, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District establishing the annual supplemental special tax for police protection.
I'll second.
Okay, I'm going to take the vote. Vice President, well, are there any comments on this first? Okay, seeing none, Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Cheryl Swat?
Yes.
Director Debbie?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
Aye.
Okay, so the measure, I'm going to vote yes, and the measure passes 5-0. Thank you. Director Constantouris, can you introduce the next item?
Did you say Director Constantouris? I was going to thank you for that motion. I've been dropping hints, I'm glad.
Yeah. No, actually, what I want to do is go to the annual appropriations limit, sorry, and then so I'm going out of order a little bit on that, sorry.
All right. This is the annual, and it was, the computations are included in were included in the budget that was just approved. And Mr. Zanoni has prepared has done the computations. I just have to locate it in my agenda packet.
It's at the very end.
At the very end, thank you.
The last few pages.
And we're recommending it's something that's done annually. In the past, we've been a little tardy in getting it done before the fiscal year. So this year, we're actually going to do it before the close of the fiscal year. So we're recommending approval of Resolution 2019-09. There's no financial cost to the district. This is just something that's required by law annually.
Okay, and this is the one that has the error of Len Welsh instead of Director Deputy.
We will have to redo that.
And also Director Madavi's name is misspelled here too.
May I ask who's writing these out of curiosity? I'm just very confused. Who's producing these?
Well, we'll correct it. We will correct that.
My question was who's producing them?
Well, I think the important part is that we will.
I would like to know who is producing them.
Well, it's different people who produce them.
Will you tell me who?
No,
I'm commanding you to tell me who, like Len Welsh did.
Excuse me, we don't command staff.
Well, that's what Len Welsh did, so I think I can do it too.
No, you cannot. You need to be courteous.
Yes, it's a personnel issue, and perhaps we can, if you would like to
I
discuss
remember,
this.
I was at that meeting. He said, Tony, I command you to tell me this. I was there.
If Len was inappropriate, it doesn't mean you can be inappropriate. We need to be courteous to each other.
Well, may I get an answer then?
I have to tell you that the only person who's ever commanded me was my mother, and you, sir, are not my mother.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't want to embarrass
Nor Jack
anybody.
Kennedy.
I don't think it's necessarily embarrassing to you.
No, I'm curious. This is not embarrassing. I'm trying to figure out who is producing these.
I've given my answer.
May I make a motion that the board adopt resolution 2019-09, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District affirming the establishment of the appropriations limit applicable, thank you, to the district during fiscal year 2019-2020.
I'll second.
With corrected,
With corrections.
okay. Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Sheraswat?
Yes.
Director Deppie?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
Aye. Though I don't think he can vote because he's not on it. Just for the record.
Okay, I will vote yes, and the motion passes 5-0. Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask our attorney, John Holtzman, to introduce the slight revisions to policy 3000, if you will.
Thank you. After soliciting public input and board discussion at the April 25th and May 25th, 2019 board meetings, the board adopted policy chapter 3000 titled Personnel Management. At the May 25th meeting, over the board general manager wished to make additional amendments which, taken together, amount to very minor changes. It's important to point out that all of the comments that were made by directors and by the general manager were considered in developing this revised product, which, and the changes are noted in track changes. The key topic areas of changes were clarifying that the police chief and the captain are subject to these policies if they don't conflict with other agreements. Refinement of the list of prohibited conduct for district employees that could result in discipline. More clarity and flexibility on performance evaluations, and removing the reference to the district's electronic resources policy and drug free awareness program as they have not been adopted yet.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any comments on the revisions?
I have some questions if you want to public first.
I think you forgot to include captain. If I'm reading the right one, 31, where you talked about applicable to the chief of police. We're not in conflict, but you don't reference captain in there. I think you meant to do that.
Actually, at this point, I don't know that we've had any discussion at all about whether the captain would be an at-will employee. Normally, uniformed officers are not at-will employees, except for the chief, obviously, who is an at-will employee.
Well, I only say that because at the last meeting, the general manager indicated that the captain would be outside of the MOU agreement, and so my assumption was that it would have to be a separate contract with the captain, similar to the chief of police. And you just indicated, I thought you indicated that the chief of police and captain would be part of this. I may have been wrong when I heard that, but
I did. I confess error.
but maybe not error, because the problem I see that you're facing is that the captain will not be part of the MOU, so therefore he will have to, or she will have to be, as the case may be, will have to be part of a separate agreement.
Well, I think that's still a subject of some conversation with the bargaining unit. And so what I would say is there may come a point at which we do want to amend the rules to include the captain, but I think that would be premature because we're in the midst of discussion with the bargaining unit on that issue.
Fair enough. One last quick question is, it looks as if the non-sworn employees will not be accruing any vacation. In other words, they don't get vacation under this.
Right. The part-time.
Pardon?
Yes, they're part-time, and they don't accrue vacation.
They don't get it.
They don't.
Just want to make sure I understood that. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to move that we extend the meeting by 15 minutes to adjourn at 10:15. Is there a second? Okay, Vice President Tassai?
Yes.
Director Sherry-Swat?
Yes.
Director Deppie?
Yes.
And Director Madavi?
Aye.
And I will vote yes, so it passes 5-0. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you for the clarifications. The readability is great. Thank you.
All right. And board comments on 3,000?
I have some questions too. First off, I just want to note that this was not minor changes in that there were a lot of things striked out and changed. Just, so let's...
It is very minor changes. There are minor changes on 21 pages. 16 pages are not touched.
Well, I mean, in terms of the changes that were made, that's a semantic point. Anyway, I had some questions about who, it says in sole discretion, district management may determine what is in the best interest of the district. May I ask who is district management? Because that question has never been clarified.
On page 1, the third paragraph under policy 3000.1.
So district management presumably would mean the general manager and I would assume the chief of police.
So you're saying that the board of directors has no say in this at all? Is this what this policy is saying? That it's their entire choice about how the district and what's good for the district, and we're just mushrooms here?
No, it's always, I'm sorry, I don't want to jump in.
That's in relation to this policy.
Yes, it's the policy. The board sets the policy, the district manager.
Wait, so the board is setting a policy where it's essentially removing its own power, is what you're saying?
Well, so typically, if you read the paragraph, sorry, it took me a minute to do that. Typically, boards do not exercise an administrative role within the district. They operate through the general manager. So this is actually fairly typical in that respect. You notice that the specifics of this are largely administrative issues.
Maybe we just at least have that clarified, because I don't know, I'm very sensitive about that, mostly because government code says particular things, and then you have a manual that's in conflict with government code, and that creates all sorts of problems, and I'd rather not have that. And
I don't believe it's in conflict.
It's semantically and intently in conflict because it can be interpreted opposite to government code.
No, I don't think so. I would disagree. So, I understand its clarity.
Because, the general manager contract says one thing, and then this says something else. That's actually another question. So, how does this relate to the general manager's MOU? Or his contract in that sense, because his contract also stipulates things. For example, A, it gives him the right to hire and fire and manage, and the board shall not instruct staff underneath him. He shall operate by government codes 61050 and 61051. And so I'm just sort of curious, how does this and that mesh?
So you have clearly overlapping authority to some extent, right? Because the district manager obviously controls all the administrative aspects of running the district. That along with really the police chief in reality, because the police chief, if it's a police matter, clearly the chief. The board obviously has policy, the power to guide through policy. It also has the power to select the district manager. So there, there is in any government entity kind of an overlap between the authorities of the board in that respect, because the board can adopt a policy that obviously affects how the city manager.
Well, because the other thing is here, then it talks about how the district reserves the right to, responsibility to administer, manage, direct, and control the workforce. So is in this case the district the general manager, or is the district, the larger organ of the board?
Well, so to be clear, I think the reason why and I understand the point you're making, but I think that the reason why it says what it says is that this is a document that's intended to be read by an employee. And so all of the authority, both the board and the district manager, all that flows down, right, ultimately. And from the standpoint of an employee, what you're saying is the district as a corporate entity.
Are we a corporate entity or a municipality?
Well, a very municipal corporate entity.
Yeah.
Is what you are.
Or a local agency.
You're a municipal corporation.
And then I guess my other thing is, why are we then shoving what's essentially an MOU or work order or like work agreement into our manual of policies? Like, wouldn't that be better, be it like a template that we would present to employees as part of their agreement when they join the district?
I'm confident that happens as well, but the normal practice is to have, if you're going to have at-will language, which is basically what you're looking at here, you normally will have that in your policies, and then you will normally also, when you write an offer letter to an at-will employee, you will typically put it there as well. You may also ask an at-will employee to sign the personnel manual, to sign that they've read the personnel manual. So you usually do all of those things. And the reason for that is because this is very, very important language.
I guess the reason I bring it up is like one of the critiques of the old policy manual was that we had the MOU for the police shoved into that, and everybody was saying that was such a terrible idea, blah, blah, blah. But here we are doing the exact same thing that was criticized.
Well, so the reason for that is that you're dealing, it's a little bit apples and oranges. The issue is this affects the folks who are not in a union, and so every municipal organization, special district, whatever, has a set of rules that apply to people who don't have an MOU. And you have to put it somewhere. And this is a personnel manual. And you do have to cover more or less the same stuff that would otherwise be in an MOU, because there would be no other place where you're commanding them to do all of these things. So that's why, this is very, very typical practice to have a personnel manual of some sort that applies to at-wills. Sometimes you have a personnel manual that actually applies in addition to an MOU to the represented group. I think the ultimate decision was made that it doesn't really make that much sense to keep amending your personnel manual when every time you change your MOU, it's probably better to just have an MOU and a personnel manual.
Yeah, so I guess then my other question is, I won't drag this on long, people want to go home. That's been concerning is like, so part of the things, I understand that because of I think it's a case law with the water district, 510, labor 510 and 512 don't apply. It was like the Johnson v. some water district somewhere that is the interpretation of those labor laws. Don't
Labor code, there are.
Yeah, I know. I read
it's a little bit complicated because labor code applies in very limited circumstances. But what's important is that the labor code provisions having to do with minimum wage, overtime, all of that do not apply.
Yeah, I know, and that was the interpretation of that case law was when brought to the court, it was saying, based on these reasons, but the FLSA does apply.
That's right.
Which is kind of ironic, given that case said it was all about sovereign, it was partly about sovereign domain. But anyway, my question was, what are safeties to avoid, say, employee abuse? Just like, I know no one would ever do it, but generally when you write laws, you also partly write laws to prevent these edge cages from being a problem.
Just give me the section, just so I know.
What page? So I guess it's section 2, it's insane.
What page?
Wait, page 2 of the thing, sorry. The one where it says that if you don't do overtime, I don't have the full thing, but it's the one that says if you don't do overtime as ordered to, you can be fired or subjected to discipline. The FLSA, I understand only, accounts for saying if you work over a certain amount of week hours, you then are on overtime. And the point of labor codes, as I understand, is to prevent like a monetary disincentive to going over 8 hours than over 12 hours.
Right, and that part does not.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying, what are the built-in controls for this district as an entity to prevent that from happening?
So, I'm not sure which section you're referring to, but let me just say.
What number on page 2 that would tell?
I don't have the exact number on me. Can I borrow your full version? Yeah, I just kind of wrote this up at home and realized.
That's hard to answer.
Key.
Of course,
I think it's number 27 on page 3, working unauthorized overtime or refusing to work.
Yeah, exactly, that one. So what is the theoretical built-in that would prevent, say, in the weird case, someone forcing them to work 18 hours or 16-hour shift because, like, we need someone here?
So, federal law doesn't provide, in actuality, all that much protection. What it does do is, of course, it provides overtime.
Yeah, exactly, after 40 hours a week.
Yeah, after 40 hours a week. So it does provide overtime. The Fair Labor Standards Act doesn't say anything about, extraordinary length of shifts. And actually in emergencies, et cetera, it's,
it's
common to end up with, like, if you have an earthquake, you might actually have people working 24 hours. It's important to understand that the police department.
But this is non-sworn. We're talking non-sworn.
Oh, that's true, but that's a good point. But you're still an emergency services agency, effectively. Everybody, under the Emergency Services Act, all of your folks, even your miscellaneous folks are that. And and you're obviously expected to operate in emergencies. So, mandatory overtime, bottom line, is perfectly legal under the FLSA, and frankly, is fairly common. Very good example of it for non-sworn folks. You don't have them, but are dispatchers. Dispatchers very typically work a huge amount of involuntary.
But they're also within the police department. They're hired, I believe they're hired.
Bottom line in any of that is that the FLSA does not limit your ability to require folks to work overtime. It does require you to pay them overtime when they work overtime.
Yeah. I'm saying that's the point. Like labor codes 510 and 512, the intent of it is to avoid abuses outside of an emergency. I'm asking, like, as an organization that strives to be ethical and all those things, what are our built-in controls similar to labor code 510 and 512?
Well, I mean, that's an operational question, but I guess the question that I would ask is there an example of somebody being forced to work 24 hours?
I'm not saying, then why is it in the labor code? In the sense, like, you could say the same thing. Like, these laws exist to prevent this behavior because somewhere else it had happened.
You may know the history that there was a time when government agencies were covered by the labor code, and now they're not. This has been debated by the legislature. Mine is not the question why. That's just the law.
Well, I guess your answer is there are no such protections, and this district does not seem interested in adding them. So, okay.
I would imagine that if there was a case of perceived or real harassment or retaliation by forcing someone to work overtime, and if they denied it, then there are all sorts of procedures in place to address that. There's grievance procedures, there's all sorts of procedures, so I think there are things in place.
Okay, I'm going to move that we adopt.
Just a couple quick questions. The second paragraph, this sentence was added, notwithstanding the foregoing, no employee may be terminated for any reason prohibited by law. Isn't that go without saying? I mean, all we're saying is we're not going to break the law. I don't understand why we need that.
So I wasn't at the last meeting, to tell you the truth. It was added in response to comments by somebody, I'm not quite sure who.
Right.
And you're right, it does go without saying. On the other hand,
I mean, if we didn't have it, would it change anything?
It wouldn't change a thing.
And for me, contracts, adding stuff you don't need is a bad idea.
On the other hand, look, I'm completely agnostic on the issue. It is the law. So the flip side.
It doesn't hurt to have it in there. It just seems a little silly to put it in, because you could put that with everything in this. every kind of clause in here, you could say, notwithstanding, this does not go against law.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, in every one of, even, let's actually just have this conversation. If you ordered somebody to work 24 hours, it might be perfectly legal. If you ordered them to work 24 hours because you had some animus against them due to their race, it would be illegal.
I mean, I guess what was the point?
It came in because of the prior sentence saying that the district retains the right to terminate someone for any reason or no reason at all and without notice. And so they wanted to make clear that you could not be fired for an illegal reason. That's the reason it was added.
I recommend the meeting. I think Director Deputy raises a really valid point.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'll be really quick. Bringing and possessing firearms, except for the chief of police, don't the other officers sometimes go on district property?
Yeah, they do. It took me a while to figure that out. If you go to the very top of the very first paragraph of the whole thing, it doesn't apply to sworn officers.
And number 35, convictions for serious traffic violations. I understand the intent, but how do you define serious?
What normally happens in these situations is it's an exercise of discretion.
Right.
Part of, and all of these are that way. I mean, in the sense that there are, failure to obtain permission to leave work for any reason during normal hours. Well, but.
Okay. I got it. That's it.
All right, so this is not agendized for action, so we don't need to.
There's actually only one other thing. The one, at least 1 week, I don't remember the page, it's the page where they talk about that you want to take, I believe that you want to take time off. I'm sorry.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's requesting?
Yeah, requesting time off.
For 1 week or as soon as possible?
Yeah, well, it said at least 1 week or I believe
soonest reasonably possible.
Yeah, so wouldn't it be better to say at, so page 11, 1 week, yeah, thanks. Thank you. So if you know in advance that you're going to be absent, you must schedule absence with your supervisor at least 1 week in advance or as soon as reasonably possible. Wouldn't it be better to say as soon as reasonably possible, preferably 1 week in advance, instead of like having this thing where you're almost creating this interpretation issue?
Honestly, I think it says the same thing as what you're saying. I mean, we're giving people a clear out but this is a little bit stronger in terms of saying just a slight bit stronger. And, again, we're only talking about people who know they're going to be absent. And telling the district in advance saves you, potentially money and other things to be planning for people's absences.
And again, this was a draft from the CSDA.
This wasn't actually, I checked, this entire section is new. It is not the CSDA's personnel section. And the CSDA manual is available. It's a public record at this point. And so people can compare it and see that what I'm saying is actually true. So none of this is actually CSDA language.
It's entirely a policy question.
Can we just leave it at that? But I think when you add as soon as reasonably possible, that means if you had an emergency and I had to say my mother's dying, I need to go home right now, that would be as soon as reasonably possible, and that has happened to me. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect at least 1 week's notice, unless there's another reason, and then it's as soon as reasonably possible.
There was also a policy on transferring.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
It's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I would say, so the transfer policy, obviously came from CSDA, and it's between, right now you don't have different district premises, and it does talk about different district premises. It's totally up to the board, but
we did address this, and we talked about an example where we could have to be relocated for the public safety building purposes into 2 locations. We might want to station somebody, I don't know, if we needed to, an emergency basis in the building E or somewhere else. So if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply, but it's flexible. It's not doing any harm.
This is about transfer requests.
Oh, I'm sorry, I made this.
Page 17, 317.2.
But it also gives the district the right to transfer folks.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the stuff above it saying that the district will be granted right to transfer after 36 months. And it's like, where do they go?
Yeah, page 17,
So even-
3170.2.
So even if parts of this, like these parts are the CSDA manual directly, which the other parts aren't, but if these parts are CSDA manual, someone clearly did not go through and completely customize this for Kensington properly.
It's actually best to try not to customize too much because you want to leave flexibility and you want to be in line with other jurisdictions. There's also growing needs. Sometimes people work at home. And so a location transfer could be, I'm ill with a broken leg, but I want to continue to work. Do I have permission to work remotely? So there are possibilities here.
Isn't that different than the teleconferencing or telecommuting?
I didn't understand your point. Could you repeat?
My point is that it's talking about that they can transfer to a new location, it's implicitly that the district owns or something, and they need to request a transfer and or the business needs of the district. But the point is we don't have any other official locations.
Well, we could keep the first sentence and the last sentence and strike in between.
I mean, I'm not the policy expert in this, but I'm like,
Employees
some of this
would like-
feels superfluous.
Well, that's how some of it may not be understandable to you specifically, but some things make sense in the big picture. So I think, would you guys like to strike the middle section of that?
I would support that.
Okay. Then I suggest that,
First and last sentence are kept and strike the rest.
yes. Because we may at some time have different locations. We may at some time have breastfeeding mothers. We may have some reason for outside employment conflicts, which we don't currently have.
Okay. I think we've had enough discussion on that, and we'll have this for adoption at our next meeting. The next agenda items, I'm going to go back to the consent calendar and the minutes. Are there any comments on the minutes?
I would like to pull them. So much stuff. Give me a second, I wrote them all down. Okay, so really, I guess there was a congruency concern about the agenda report for the fire board discussion, but I think we squared it out that we all agreed no action was actually taken there. I also want to make this point that I really object to my characterization of my board comments because I was not concerned about the dispatch times per se. Actually, let me just read it and then read what I actually meant. So it said, Director Modavi,
What page?
page 2, board and staff comments at the very end. Director Modavi noted his concern on the response time from his Public Record Act request to Albany. That Public Record Act request was not about response times. It was about Matrix's data, as I found from Albany being very upset and essentially telling Matrix, your data makes no sense. And so I don't know why this is suddenly being turned into me being
So
concerned about response
what would you like?
I think I wasn't there obviously in person, but I think it might be talking about the response time to the PRA.
That's what I thought too.
No!
Okay.
I said no.
Don't get excited. Speak slowly. Take a couple of deep breaths, and then tell me what you want written.
Maybe put an ice block on your head too. But
If you
anyway,
have it,
so
just tell me what you want written.
So I would like it to say, let me see, I wrote this down, that I was concerned about the quality of Matrix's...
Wait, stop. Okay, about
Director
the quality of the matrix data. Okay.
as discovered from a PRA request to Albany.
As discovered. Okay, so Director Madavi noted his concern on the quality of matrix data
I
as
think
discovered.
quality and interpretation, because, the data from Albany...
Just tell me what you want. Just slow down.
Director Modavi noted his concern about the quality and interpretation of Matrix's data as discovered when reading emails obtained from Public Records Act to Albany.
As discovered by reading, or when reading emails. What do you want? Emails from your public records request?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what I think you are saying. Director, right now, Director Madavi noted his concern about the quality and interpretation of matrix data as discovered when reading emails from his Public Record Act request to Albany.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I also want to make a quick point that I wish to state my understanding from everything I've been reading about directors and liability, that there is generally a legal liability associated with writing the minutes.
Okay. All right. I move to adopt these minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Sherr-Swat?
Yes.
Director Duffy?
Yes.
Is that with
Director
the edits?
Duffy? No, yeah, with the edits.
Well, I'm going to vote no because I don't think action minutes are appropriate for this board at this time in our history.
Okay, and I'm going to vote yes, so it passes 4-1, and I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second that.
Vice President Desai?
Aye.
Director Sherr-Swat?
Yes.
Director Duffy?
Yes.
Director Madavi?
Aye.
Okay, and I will vote yes, so it passes 5-0. Thank you very much. And the Warriors lost.
Yeah.